speaking about the Uyghur issue. We're going to be speaking about the genocide against the people of East Turkestan, occupied East Turkestan. Now, the first thing to keep in mind is, as Muslims, as believers, the Prophet ﷺ taught us that the whole ummah is one body, Now, what does that mean? That means, it's in essence, that if one part of the body is in pain, the whole body is in pain. It's not possible that your hand is in pain and your other hand is unaffected. The whole body is impacted. So the fact is, when it comes to this issue, if you guys want to join in discussion, you can come, no worries, yeah? So when it comes to this issue, as Muslims, we have a duty to speak up, right? So I think it's very important that there's a lot of disinformation, there's a lot of propaganda, there's a lot of lies, and we need to show people what is going on. And wherever we are from, like I'm originally from Pakistan, you're originally from Bangladesh, other people, like you're British, right? You're Riva, okay, everyone's from different backgrounds, but essentially we all are Muslim. That's the first and foremost thing, that's the most important thing.
Do you mean everyone in this world, or do you mean just the Muslims in this world are all Muslim, or the whole mankind is Muslim?
No, what I mean is, as Muslims, we shouldn't let nationalism get in the way of speaking up for the Muslims who are suffering.
As in the Ummah.
As in the Ummah, right? Okay, so what has been happening in Chinese occupied East Turkestan? The first thing to note is a very large part of the Muslim world was controlled by colonial powers. This is very important to understand. For example, India, historic Bangladesh, historic the Indus Valley civilization, all of this region was controlled by the British, and they controlled it for many years. The French controlled Algeria. Iraq was controlled by the British. But what a lot of people don't recognize is other parts of the Muslim world were also conquered. So for example, West Turkestan, which is the countries of Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, all of these stans, they were controlled by the Soviet Union. And East Turkestan was controlled by China. They took over it. Now these states, what did they do? This is very important to understand. These states tried to apply state atheism on those countries. So they tried to get people to disbelieve in Allah. They tried to get people to turn away from religion. Now, West Turkestan got independence. You got all those different states that got independence. However, East Turkestan is a place that didn't get independence, and it's a place where today there's actually a genocide happening against Muslims. Now, when we think about Muslims that are suffering, we think of the Syrians, we think of the Palestinians, we think of the Iraqis, we think of the Afghans, we think of the Rohingya, we think of the Yemenis, we think of these people. A lot of people don't think about the Uyghurs. Think about the Uyghurs. They are the most oppressed Muslim group in the entire world. You will not find a group of Muslims which are more oppressed than the Uyghurs. So what do we want to do? What is our activism about? The first thing is highlighting the issue. What is the issue of the Chinese Communist Party against us? The issue is this book. The issue is the Quran. If you believe in this book, then you are an enemy of the Chinese Communist Party. If you believe this book is truthful, then you're an enemy of the state. If you believe this book and the teachings of this book are greater than the teachings of Xi Jinping, then again you're an enemy of the state. Now, what's important to highlight is this, and this talk that I'm giving is for obviously Muslims and non-Muslims, but I just want to check, how many people here are Muslim? Raise your hands. Okay. Do you believe in this book? What if I told you there are Muslims like you who believe in this book, but because they believe in this book, they are put in concentration camps, they are raped, they are sterilized, their organs are taken away from them? I just want to ask everyone a question here. How many of you guys have children? Raise your hand. Okay, I want you to do a thought experiment. Have you guys ever been shopping or somewhere else, school or elsewhere, and your child goes missing for like a minute or half a minute? Has that ever happened to you? Everyone. How do you feel at that moment? Horrible, distressed. Right now there are hundreds of thousands of Uyghur children which are snatched from their parents while the parents are in concentration camps. This is happening. This is happening in Chinese Communist parties or occupation of East Turkestan. So, as Muslims, and I'm guessing are you from Pakistani background? As a Pakistani, and I'm a Pakistani myself, when we think about issues, the number one issue in Pakistan we think about is what? Kashmir. We think about Kashmir. As Pakistanis, Kashmir is the first thing. Even as a person from Bangladesh, you know, Kashmir is still number one. However, the oppression that is happening in East Turkestan, which is next door to Kashmir, by the way.
It has been happening before Kashmir.
It's been happening even before Kashmir. Thank you. You're Kashmiri. Please come. Let's have a discussion. You're from Kashmir.
My family from Kashmir.
Yeah. You're from Azad Kashmir. Okay. So, how is the fact that you're on this side and you probably have family on the other side, there's oppression on the other side, correct? Now, East Turkestan, the oppression is so bad that they would love to go to occupied Indian Kashmir for a holiday. That's how bad it is in occupied East Turkestan. Their children are taken away, their organs are taken away. And there's a lot of Muslims in the UK. We get Pakistani Muslims, Somali Muslims, Bangladeshi Muslims, Moroccan Muslims, British Muslims. We get all types of different Muslims. However, amongst the Pakistani diaspora, amongst the Pakistani expats who are here, amongst the people who've even been born here for generations, do you not think there is a duty to support our brethren across the border in East Turkestan? And how do you think we should support them?
Any which way possible. Any which way possible. Militarily, financially.
Okay, so let's have this discussion. And here's what I'm proposing today. Why did Israel pull out of Gaza when it did these attacks for 11 days?
Pressure from the
Pressure.
world leaders of the country.
There was no military intervention from Muslims. The fact is, there's no point going for the most difficult thing when the easier thing is available. So what we propose for as activists, we openly state this. We state a non-military, non-violent support for East Turkestan through democratic institutions like the UN, through the European Union. And what are we saying? We're saying to the Pakistani people, you should care about your Muslim brethren across the border. Now, there may be people in Pakistan who say, we don't support East Turkestan as an independent state. I would say, but do you support their right to pray and fast and be Muslims? So at least support that. Now, as a Kashmiri, do you feel that there's enough done for the Uyghur issue? Okay. Tell me, what have you seen yourself and how do you view the issue?
I mean, the issue is something that's really just being treated unjustly. It's not really given enough attention as it should be. It should be given more attention. This should be a lot more done by it. Unfortunately, it's not being as publicised as everything else. Like Palestine, obviously, is bad. What's happening is bad. What's happening in the UK is it's like an everyday thing going on.
Everyday thing.
No one's really doing nothing about it. No one's voicing their opinions.
Is it mediarised in Pakistan of what's happening across the border? In Pakistan or in Kashmir, in the community or in the media in Kashmir or in Pakistan, is it mediarised of what's going on just across the border to the Muslims?
It probably will be, but very small crowd. Like a major thing.
The closest I can relate to is my family are from Bangladesh.
Yeah.
What's happening in Burma?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I'll be honest, the government in Bangladesh, from what I've read, and when I speak to my elders, they want them out of the country, but we should, like you said, we have a duty. Any Muslim, they're our neighbours.
I'm a Kashmiri, but I'm still saying, okay, what's happening in Kashmir is bad.
Yeah.
These are neighbours.
That's it.
Constant apply line on it.
Yeah. And
why do you think our governments, our motherland governments, are not taking any action or responsibility to what's
That's
going
a very good question.
To me, it's
Yes,
sad.
please come in.
Where is it being discussed in terms of...
No, you have to come a bit more closer in.
discussed in...
They won't be able to hear you on the thing unless you come in.
Where is it being discussed in terms of whether it's in the UN or the Parliament, or where is it being discussed?
Okay, good.
Because obviously you're discussing it.
Sure.
Am I right?
No, you're right. Yeah.
I'm right to think that the UN have made a comment on it.
Yeah. So where it's being discussed, and that's going to be linked to why other governments are not discussing it. So both of what you're saying is all linked. A very good question there. So the United Nations, its hands are tied because China sits on the Security Council, so it can veto. It can simply say, for example, we want to have a discussion on this or that, it can veto it. And the United Nations, sadly, is not really all that democratic. So for example, in the United Nations, you'll get France with a population of, I don't know, 70 million or whatever it is, right? You'll get China, you'll get United States, you'll get the UK, and you get United States, right? So maybe I'm missing a nation here. Russia, right? You'll get these states. Now, they're supposed to represent the world. Is there a single representative from an Islamic country on the United Nations? Yeah, Muslims are 1/4 of the people on earth. How is it possible that you have France with a country of about 70 million, the French are represented, but you don't have representatives from 1/4 of humanity? And the thing is, so you asked, sorry, before you go to, you asked who speaks about it. So, the American government has declared, have recognized the genocide. The British government has recognized the genocide. Other European governments are following suit, the Australian government as well. Next week, there's an Uyghur Tribunal happening in London. Just like with the Bosnian genocide, with the Serbs killing the Bosnians, the same person, Jeffrey Nice, who headed that, is heading this tribunal. It's a people's tribunal. They're going to bring testimonies from academics and from concentration camp survivors, and they're going to publicly acknowledge what's basically going on, whether it's a genocide or not. Of course, it's going to say there's a genocide. So these discussions are happening. But the discussion is, why isn't Pakistan? Why isn't Saudi Arabia? Why isn't Bangladesh? Why aren't Islamic speaking? Very simple answer, economics. Very simple answer, economics. The fact is, China is a rising power. China has a lot of money. Pakistan wants to have trade with China. They want to have wealth. So does Bangladesh, so does other countries. However, why can we not have both? Why can the Pakistani government not say, fair enough, we will have discussions with you, we will have friendly relationships with you, we will be on good terms, but do not treat our fellow Muslims like this. Okay, there may be Pakistanis here, I don't know what your view is. There may be Pakistanis who say we don't support East Turkestan, but we support the Uyghurs. There may be some who say we support East Turkestan. That's irrelevant for the overall thing that we at least all agree on for now, at least for now, which is get the people out of the concentration camps, the millions of people. Give back the children to the parents. The organ harvesting, the sterilization, the rapes, all of this stuff that's basically going on needs to come to an end. Your question, sir?
So how do we get into like this? There's no Muslim opinion, so what's the way of getting to it?
I'm not too sure about that. I'm not too sure what the answer to that is. However, I think for now, at least, on the Uyghur issue, we can get friendly states to try and support us. The most important thing is, if we look at it from a purely iman point of view, or taqwa point of view, forget the geopolitics of who benefits or who doesn't benefit. It is the duty of a Muslim to help another Muslim. And if we can help them by raising our voices, and this is why obviously we're reaching out to Bangladeshi audiences, to British audiences, to Algerians, whoever, Bosnians, thank you. However, Pakistanis in particular, I'm calling upon the Pakistani diaspora in the UK and expats and Pakistanis in Pakistan. Forget, even if you don't know about the geopolitics, let's get the people out of the concentration camps. If you want to have, as the Pakistani government, as the Pakistani people, there may be people in politics who say, oh, we don't upset China, we want to have good relations with China, we want to benefit from China's rise. Fine, do that. But then, even though I don't agree with that, but fine, even if you want to do that, at least acknowledge the genocide and tell them to come out of the concentration camps, right? Now, it's easy to speak the truth when you're comfortable. For example, right now, it's fashionable to speak about Palestine. Do you know the Pakistani government's reaction to Palestine? Have you seen it? Been very strong. Very strongly came out in defense, okay? When it comes to Kashmir, very strong response of the Pakistani government, right? We're not going to give an inch of Kashmir. Kashmir belongs to us wholeheartedly, which I believe in. However, when it comes to the Uyghur issue, the Pakistani government says, Oh, we don't know about this.
No. The foreign minister said the other day when he was being interviewed
Shah Mahmood Qureshi,
by
yeah.
CNN, he said, "Oh, we have our own way of talking to China. We have a good relationship. We are talking, but we have our own way."
But you see what he did. Yeah. But you see what he did. And this is, the CNN reporter asked him. He gave a very powerful talk about Palestine. And then she asked him, what about the Uyghurs? And then he said, we have our own way of talking to the Chinese, and we have economic relations with them or whatever. The thing is, you're being inconsistent. About the Palestinians, you're not talking to the Israeli government secretly. You're telling them to their face, stop this. Yet obviously Palestine is the number one in terms of Al-Aqsa, but in terms of the oppression and the killing and the sterilization of concentration camps, the Israelis are not doing that to the Palestinians, right? So he doesn't speak up about that. He just simply says, like you said, we have our own ways of communicating.
So the question was coming from a pro-Zionist media. It was a befitting answer to them, but I agree with you.
He was 100% right on the Palestinian issue. Shah Mahmood Qureshi was right on the Palestinian issue. So what we're trying to do, we're trying to get Pakistani activists, Pakistani media outlets, activists across Pakistan who are speaking up about the Palestinians, the Yemenis, the Rohingya, the Syrians. Please add the Uyghurs to your list. That's a rational ask, isn't it? To speak about the Uyghurs.
These questions are mainly raised by people who are not friends with Pakistan, whether it's the government or whatever. When you try to bring that question up as a citizen, they think you're part of that anti-establishment and all that. It goes into completely different dimensions.
Exactly. And this is very good. Sorry, what's your name? Nasser. Very good thing that he said. He said the people who normally raise the Uyghur issue are people who have nefarious intentions towards the state of Pakistan. So for example, you'll get the Indian government, right, who speak up about this, the Uyghur issue. Indian government doesn't care about the Uyghur issue. Modi's government is a fascist government. The only reason why they're not doing to the Muslims of India what Xi Jinping is doing to the Muslims of East Turkestan is because Modi will not have the support of the average Indian. Indian people have freedom of expression, freedom of media to some degree. They will speak out against this. That's why the oppression in India is curtailed. However, the fact is, Pakistanis like you, Pakistanis like me, Pakistanis who are here and others in Pakistan and outside, we can say, we recognize Kashmir is 100% belongs to Pakistan. We recognize that we do not believe the Pakistani state to be an illegitimate state. We will 100% accept that's a legitimate state. We're not anti-state. We don't have any hatred towards even the leadership. So this is why what we're trying to do as activists is say we are not anti-Pakistan, we are pro-Uyghur. Whether you're pro-independence or not pro-independence is irrelevant. Okay, the other thing to keep in mind, Charlie Hebdo, when the cartoons were made against our Prophet, what was the reaction from the Muslims across the world against the Charlie Hebdo cartoons? Anger. All over the world. Okay, why? Because the picture of the Prophet was depicted, and if you make a picture of the Prophet, you are blaspheming against the Prophet. And in this case, you have a cartoon which is ridiculing him. Now, I just want everybody to recognize something. The Chinese state media, in one of its dramas, it has this horrible looking picture of some weird looking shepherd, and it says this is the Prophet of Islam, and it says the Muslims worship this man. Why are we not having the same reaction against the Chinese media, against the Chinese government? You see, in France, Charlie Hebdo is independent of the government. So you can say to an extent that the government is trying to defend free speech, which is not really defending free speech, this is just incitement, but there's not a direct correlation yet. Yet in China, the Chinese state is actually calling Islam a mental disease. It is blaspheming against the Prophet. Do you know the Uyghurs? The Quran, they have to bury it in the ground. Now, as a Muslim, if I put the Quran on the floor, all the Muslims will get angry. Yet, in Chinese-occupied East Turkestan, they have to bury it to hide it from the Chinese government. Do you know that when these Uyghurs go to these concentration camps, the first lesson they're told is that you have to accept that there is no God, there is no Allah. There are many testimonies coming out from these concentration camps of women that were gang raped. On the BBC, you will see these reports coming out. And there are others, and you can, if anybody is going to go to Turkey, go to Zainab Bureau. That's an area in Turkey. You will go see Uyghurs who never want to come on camera and ask them, and they will start crying in front of you of how their family members are missing. So, the Muslim world is far behind at the moment the Western world in terms of condemning this. Now, some people may say, oh, you see the West, they are against China, that's why they're speaking up against the issue. Okay? And so they will say they don't really care about the Uyghurs. Now the thing is, I don't agree with this argument, but hypothetically, if we were to agree, does that mean the genocide is not taking place? No, the genocide is there. So it doesn't matter if the West is supporting it or not supporting it, the Muslims should be supporting it first and last. It's irrelevant whether the Western world wants to support it or not support it. And as Muslims, we want recognition. Like you're Kashmiri, and you know this. You want recognition of Kashmir not being part of India. You want that recognition. Pakistanis want that recognition. Bangladesh, they also have protests for this. We have protests for Palestine, right? We have protests for Palestine. We accept that Al-Aqsa is ours, Jerusalem is ours. Why not Kashgar? Why not Hotan? Why not Urumqi? Why not East Turkestan? I want to ask everybody a question here. There's a lot of Muslims here, alhamdulillah. I want to ask you a question. When did Islam enter East Turkestan? Enter that region? Have a guess. Have a guess how long ago? Turkestan. When did Islam enter East Turkestan? Okay, let me put it in an easier way. What century do you think Islam entered East Turkestan? Have a guess. Thank you. 100 or 200 years after Hijri. That's one guess. So we're talking about the 8th or 9th century. Okay? Any other guesses? Islam entered into East Turkestan in the 10th century by a sultan by the name Sultan Satuk Burga Khan. Sultan Satuk Burga Khan, his family and him, they used to believe in Tengriism. Anyone heard of Tengriism? This is the religion of the Mongols, right? Now Sultan Satuk Burga Khan, he saw Muslims and he was inspired by Islam. He saw the truthfulness of Islam, so he left the religion of Tengriism to become Muslim. And he was a sultan. He was a leader. From the 10th century to the 21st century, Islam has been there in East Turkestan, from the leadership all the way down. Yet today, in the 21st century, in the time of social media, in the time of mass reporting, in the time when collectively humanity is more aware of human rights, there is a genocide taking place. There are millions of people in concentration camps. Now, earlier on, someone reminded me, one of the brothers from Speaker's Corner reminded me, the first person to raise awareness about the Uyghur issue in Speaker's Corner, which is a historic place of activism. What was the faith of that person? Does anyone know? Does anyone know? It was a Jewish person. It was a Jewish person. I don't know his name. But that Jewish person used to come here and he used to speak about the genocide. And he's regularly used to come here and regularly used to be in Golders Green. Why? Why was this Jewish person standing up when the Muslims were not standing up? Why was he standing up when even the other Western governments were not standing up? It's for a simple reason. Because since World War II, the concentration camps with millions of people inside them have not been seen on this earth. And they know, the Jewish people know what it's like to be in concentration camps. That's why they stood up first. We don't have to assume, like some people do, sadly some Muslims do, that just because a Jewish person is standing behind something, there must be some sort of conspiracy. No, they stood up because they recognize these are concentration camps. We know what they're like. We are survivors of this, and we don't want this Holocaust to happen to anyone else. Now the difference is this, and I want everybody to recognize this. The concentration camps of the Nazis, they did not come down by us simply asking the Nazis, you have these concentration camps, please get rid of them. Why? Because nobody knew they existed. Nobody knew these concentration camps existed to the level that they did outside of Germany. Even the average German didn't know about this. Yet we have evidence of the concentration camps in Turkestan. We have satellite imagery. We have testimonies. Even the Chinese government themselves, they call these vocational centers. Vocational centers. I'm going to highlight to you one person who's gone to his vocational center. There is a Uyghur doctor by the name Dr. Gulshan Abbas. Dr. Gulshan Abbas is a medical doctor. And this person was taken into the camps. And no one's heard of this person now. There's no communication. And she's supposed to go to a vocational camp to learn vocational skills. You want a retired medical doctor to go learn how to speak and write? What kind of nonsense is this? But the real reason is that the Uyghur activists across the world who stand up, these are their family members. So Dr. Gulshan Abbas is in the concentration camps. We don't know whether she's alive or dead. But the reason is because her sister, Roshan Abbas, stood up for the Uyghurs and gave a talk. And a few days later, her sister ended up in the concentration camp. Next week here in London, in this historic city, we have the Uyghur Tribunal. And we have the World Uyghur Congress, who is going to be attending. And many academics, independent academics, and Uyghur activists from across the world. Just yesterday, I want everybody to understand something. Just yesterday, one of the people attending, Dolkun Isa, who is the head of World Uyghur Congress, his attendance led to his brother yesterday being sent in China to prison. This is what we're facing with. We are facing a situation where when people are speaking up, their families disappearing. But let me ask you something. When you guys speak up for the Uyghurs, are your family going to disappear? They're not going to disappear. You don't have family. There's nothing that should stop us. There are many Uyghurs who cannot speak because they know their family will disappear. So the Uyghur Tribunal, which is happening, you can Google this. This tribunal, its website's been attacked and it's down, so the ticketing has to be done manually now. And on top of this, the Chinese state media is attacking this tribunal, which is taking place. I want to ask everybody a question. Why isn't this tribunal being done by the United Nations?
Because China will not allow it.
China will not allow it. They will veto it. And people are trading human rights for money. So governments don't want to speak up. Next week in London, inshallah, there is a people's tribunal. It's going to be led by people who have credibility in terms of their history of dealing with genocides, and it's going to be independent, free of government interference, free of any Chinese Communist Party influence. And what are they going to do? They're going to come together and they're going to decide, is there a genocide going on? And it's bloody obvious to anybody that looks at the evidence that this genocide is taking place, and this genocide is not going to stop unless the Chinese government is taken to account. And I want to highlight something, because most of us here are Muslims, but this goes for non-Muslims as well. The Prophet, peace be upon him, taught us, if you see an evil, what do? Change it with your hand. If you can't change it with your hand, what do? You speak out against it. And if you cannot do that, you hate it in your heart. Now the first thing is, we cannot physically pull out the people from the concentration camps. We cannot physically go to the hundreds of thousands of children which are missing and find them and give them to their parents. What we can do is on social media, highlight the Uyghur Tribunal, highlight the situation in East Turkestan, highlight the fact that the oppression in East Turkestan, whether you believe in its independence or you don't, the oppression in East Turkestan is unbearable. What do we do as the world community? What do we do after a genocide? What do we say? What do we say?
Not again.
Never again. Thank you. Never again.
But sorry, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
How can we, as somebody who suffered a lot of from the UK, how can I make sure that this is not just something targeted against China just because the UK it doesn't like China?
Very good question. Very good question. The question is, and I'm going to change your question to make it broader, not just the UK government, but the West in general. Some people will say, how can we believe the West when this could be just a ploy against China? Because China is a rising power. Here's a simple answer. We don't need the Western world to know that there's a genocide going on. The genocide has been documented and witnessed, and we have evidence for this from Uyghurs in Turkey, from Uyghurs in Pakistan, from Uyghurs who have gone all across the world, including Australia. So even if, and this is true, prior to President Trump coming to power, the Chinese government was not being taken to account on the Uyghur issue. Yet the Uyghur activists were saying there's a genocide going on. So you have to look at where the evidence goes. The evidence for the genocide goes back way before 27, before Trump. In fact, what we find is the Muslims in East Turkestan, they suffered in the Cultural Revolution. They suffered in the Great Leap Forward. They suffered in the Barren Town Massacre. They've suffered many of these types of killings and rapes and tortures. Let me tell you guys, in the 1990s, when Uyghur activists were not asking for independence, were not asking for more money, when they were saying, stop killing our children, stop sterilizing our women, stop forcing our women to have abortions, and they had a peaceful protest, they were butchered and massacred. And the people who survived, they put them in buildings. And East Turkestan is a cold place in the winter. And they dosed them with cold water. And these people had frostbites and their limbs were getting disintegrated. We have evidence of this. This is a criminal regime. The Nazis would have been jealous of the Chinese Communist Party. Now let me explain to you the difference between the Nazis and the Chinese Communist Party. The Nazis didn't have technology. Do you know that a well-known mobile phone company, Huawei, they are complicit in using AI technology to oppress the Uyghurs and to help the Chinese Communist state? Because Uyghurs, they look distinct to Chinese people. But in a crowd, it's sometimes hard to tell. So you need cameras. You need cameras that can actually point out that these people look different.
Content.
Yes.
Content-based imagery.
Exactly. Thank you, sir. Facial recognition technology. So China has developed facial recognition technology to actually take out the Uyghurs from their from a crowd, so they can find out who the Uyghurs are. And they also have Uyghur technology to detect emotions. Just yesterday, one of the stories that came out is of an Uyghur taxi driver, a woman, who somebody asked her about her husband. She started crying because her husband's in a concentration camp, but she didn't say anything, but there's tears in her eyes. She was arrested because they're showing dissatisfaction. There are cameras everywhere. And the Uyghurs, let me tell you something. They cannot say Assalamu alaikum because they have to download an app. They have to download an app, and the app is recording words that they use. Have you ever noticed that sometimes you're talking about something near your mobile phone, when you go on Google Ads, that ad comes up?
But isn't the West doing that to everybody anyway?
Isn't the West doing what?
Doing it to spying. I'm sure they have.
Okay,
this
good.
I'm sure they do.
The question is, everybody uses AI technology. Everyone uses technology. The West is not using that to put people in concentration camps. The West is not using that to sterilize and rape and kill and take out people's organs and steal their children.
Didn't they?
Okay, no, here's the point. And
I think, sorry, but the problem with the Uyghur is that it's a significant different minority, which is they're going to suffer, and I'm sorry to say that we Muslims are the weakest, most meaningless people on the current day, because what's happening. But I just cannot help to see that this crocodile tears from the West about, oh, the Uyghur.
Sir, what you've given me is a classic rebuttal, and a classic rebuttal which I want to address. And that classic rebuttal is this: isn't it true that some nations from the West invaded Iraq?
Yes.
Isn't it true that some nations from the West, they support Israel? Isn't it true that some nations from the West, they do X, Y, Z? But because the same West is now talking about the Uyghur issue, some Muslims are like, why should we believe them? So here's my rebuttal. We don't need to have the Western understanding what's going on. We have the understanding from the Uyghurs themselves. The other issue is the Uyghurs were talking about this topic before the West got involved. Number two, when the Iraq war took place, I was, I think, 16 years old. I was not 16, sorry, I was 18 years old. And I went to a protest in March here in Speaker's Corner, here in Hyde Park. And the march was attended by at least 1 million people, if not more. And most of these people were not Muslim. The fact is this: let's not generalize. We hate it when ISIS does an attack, when Al Qaeda does an attack, when these terrorists do an attack, and all Muslims are called terrorists. What do? Don't generalize. But because Iraq was invaded, because certain states support Israel, does that mean the white man is the devil, the West is evil? No. So let's not be. Wait, one second, sir. So the fact is, let's not be victims of our own criticism. What we need to understand is this: the Western world has good people and it has bad people. The Muslim world has good people and bad people. There are good people in China, there are bad people in China. What we shouldn't do is this: because the West is the most vocal in terms of the oppression against the Uyghurs at the moment. Previously, Erdogan, he was the most vocal, but now he's pulled back. What we need to realize is this: it's the most incredibly naive thing to do to simply discard the... can you move out of the way, please? Thank you. It's the most incredibly naive thing to do to discard the Uyghur genocide because the West is speaking up against it. I know you're not saying that, but what we need to understand is this: as Muslims, our duty to the Uyghurs is first and foremost. If the West tomorrow hypothetically gives up support for the Uyghurs and says the British government, the American government, the Uyghur Tribunal, and say everybody in the West tries to deny the genocide, we will still speak up.
I have a question.
Because, and one more thing, the West is speaking up, so why... One second. Since the West is speaking up, and average Westerners are speaking up, should we as Muslims tell them get lost? We didn't tell them, one second, we didn't tell them to get lost when we had 500,000 or 200,000 Palestinians with a lot of non-Muslims. We didn't tell them get lost. We didn't tell them to get lost with the Iraq thing. So with the Uyghur issue and with the governments, what we need to realize is our support for the Uyghur issue, if the West wants to help the Muslims, then why would we reject them?
Westerners, I'm talking about the Western government. Why are they suddenly showing support to poor Muslim people that are being oppressed when they have people oppressed all over the world? They oppress the world. I'm not talking about the Western man, I'm talking about the Western government.
Okay, good.
They must have a secondary gain from this. That's
okay, good. Your question is to repeat, and that's a very good question, sir. Your question is, the West is gaining something by criticizing China.
Yeah.
By speaking up against the genocide. Now, that particular argument is exactly what the Chinese government says. It says, oh, you know, look, the West doesn't speak up, the Western governments don't speak up about the Palestinians, they do the way that they do about the Uyghurs, so they must have an agenda. Now, hypothetically, if we all agree that they have an agenda, what we need to understand is that agenda is irrelevant to the fact that there is a genocide going on. So tomorrow, hypothetically, Trump apparently praised the concentration camps like 2 years ago, a couple of years ago. I don't know if it's true. But it's hypothetically, say, a future American president, British Prime Minister, or Australian Prime Minister, they say, do you know what? It's all nonsense, and they make a nice trade deal with China. We will continue. However, all the argument I'm making is this. If they are willing to, like the BBC, go and film what's happening, why would we stop them? I'll give you an example. When it came to a certain sister called Dursane Zayabudun, I met her when I was in Turkey. She was barely alive. I contacted the Uyghur Human Rights Project in America. They got her across the border across to America. They gave her medical treatment. They helped her. They have contacts with the BBC. The BBC interviewed her. Later on, I tried to get more of these stories documented by the BBC to the best of my efforts. Whether they worked or not is irrelevant. What's most important is, if the BBC was not talking about the Uyghur issue 30 years ago, 40 years ago, 50 years ago, because this has been going on for generations, that's irrelevant to me. What's relevant is they're interested now, as long as they're not lying, and they're not lying. So for me, Fox News comes out with nonsense against Muslims. The BBC is a lot better. It's not the best. It completely misrepresents Muslims on some issues. However, even if Fox News came and said, do you know what? We want to highlight the Uyghur issue. Should we tell them to get lost? No, because at the end of the day, whatever means necessary to help our brothers and sisters come out of the concentration camps. Yes, sir.
Shouldn't there be first protest against the OIC recent sitting? They were all of them sitting here. Shouldn't our local people go protest against their own government?
Very good.
Number one.
Very good.
We all know China being China.
No, let me answer your first question before I forget. No, let me ask you your first question. The question you've asked is a brilliant question. The question is, the Organization of Islamic Countries, shouldn't we protest against them? We have protested against them, but something we need to keep in mind. If you're in Egypt and you challenge the Egyptian government and you say to them, how dare you send back Uyghurs to China, you will probably disappear yourself. The average Egyptian will probably disappear. So in many parts of the Muslim world, you cannot speak up. However, as Western Muslims who've been here for generations, like my grandfather came here in the 1950s. So he's originally from Pakistan. I still consider myself a Pakistani, although he came here, 70 years ago. The fact is this, I am not in any danger, nor is anybody else in any danger in the Western world.
Extended family, still extended family?
No, because the fact is this, the fact is, if for example, you are speaking about the issue in the Muslim world, some parts of the Muslim world are safe. Turkey is safe. Other countries don't like China, is safer. Some countries, depending on who you are, for example, in the country of Pakistan, there are some well-known personalities who and I didn't even know about this until recently, they've spoken out about the Uyghur issue. Some religious figures. Like yesterday, there's a Maulana in Pakistan by the name Maulana Tariq Masood. Now, I had no idea until yesterday, he gave a talk in 2019 in which he spoke up against the oppression of the Uyghurs. Likewise, in Pakistan, have you heard of the blasphemy movement? The blasphemy movement. There's a party in Pakistan which is always speaking up against blasphemy. Now, that party, some of the people in that party, they say some really negative things against the government, against the military, which are completely counterproductive. And I don't believe in anti-state activism in Pakistan, overseas or in Pakistan. However, that guy, I've forgotten his name, he passed away earlier on this year, the leader. He himself spoke up about the Uyghur issue as well. So now there are popular figures in Pakistan who are speaking about this. So in Pakistan, in Turkey, in some countries where you have more freedom than others, like Malaysia. Malaysia is another example for us. Why? Because Malaysia, the Chinese are coming in, and slowly the Muslim identity is being eroded. So the Malaysian government as well is taking a bit of a stronger stance. Sometimes, other times it's not. So we need to utilize this. Yes, your second question.
What if you were taken in a room with the Prime Minister of Pakistan, Chief of Army Staff, Foreign Minister, and they tell you, we appreciate...
Come here. That's a brilliant question.
If they say, we appreciate...
No, repeat the question.
What if you've been taken in a room with the Chief of Army Staff of Pakistan, Prime Minister, Foreign Minister, and they say, we appreciate what you're saying, we feel your pain, but because of the geopolitics, because the narrative will support India, anti-Zionist, CNN, all that, we are dealing with it state to state on a diplomatic level in our own way, and let's deal it that way. If you bring it on the road, that will give more damage to the country. What would you say to that?
Very good question. Very good question. What I would say to them is this. What I would say to them, you are the representatives of this Muslim nation. We as the people of this nation, even though I'm not a resident of Pakistan, but even as an overseas person with a Pakistani heritage, I will say my allegiance is to you. I am not going to rebel against you, and nor do we believe in Islam. You just randomly rebel against rulers. No, one second. What I would say is, firstly, I would acknowledge to them, we recognize you as the rulers. Okay? Now, when Imam Ahmad, when he was being persecuted, and he was brought in front of the Khalifa, and he was being persecuted by the Khalifa, what did he say? Assalamu alaikum ya Amirul Mu'mineen. Meaning, peace and blessings be upon you, the leader of the Muslims. So the fact is, the Muslims of a nation, they recognize their rulers as their rulers. However, we can say to the rulers, you are the rulers of this country, and you have a responsibility to protect us. You have a responsibility to take care of crime, but you also have a responsibility to the people of Kashmir. And well done to you for standing up for the people of Kashmir. Well done for you for when India tried to attack, to give them a slap in their face. Well done. Well done to you for speaking out for the Palestinians. Well done to you for speaking out repeatedly for the Bosnians. However, I will say to them, you right now in front of the Pakistani nation and in front of the world, you are looking inconsistent because you're not speaking about the Uyghur issue publicly. Now they may say to me, we are using our channels to speak up about this issue. Yes, but then I will say to them, if you want to do that, you think that's the best, you're going to have to answer to Allah on the Day of Judgment. That's not the best answer. However, I will say to them, as an overseas Pakistani, and as Pakistanis in this country, in the UK, and in Pakistan, and Muslims across the Muslim world, we are still going to speak up about this topic. And remember, we're your stakeholders. Whenever there's a presidential election, imagine if a Pakistani leader comes who says Kashmir is for India. No one will elect him. So the thing is, the people's opinion matters. So I will say to them, if you care about people's opinion, you must know everybody in the world knows about this topic now. People in Pakistan know, people in Turkey know, people in Egypt know, people in China know. And in fact, let me tell you something. We as Muslims do not have a problem with China. We do not have a problem with the Chinese culture. The Chinese Communist Party hates Chinese culture. That's why they had the Cultural Revolution. One sec. That's why they had a great leap forward. The Chinese Communist Party is the most oppressive against Chinese people themselves. So we... Good.
Let me add to that.
Are you what, from Afghanistan or away from Pakistan as well?
Nowadays understand the power of money, the power of military.
Okay, let me add to that.
If you don't have the money and if you don't have the military, you can just keep silent.
Let me add to that.
If you have the money like what we have in the Gulf states and things, and you are not using it, that's treachery.
Before you answer, let me add to that.
If you have the military and you are not threatening with it, so China will not listen to you or to me.
Can
or
I answer
to-
this first?
Or
This
to
is the
people
part-
talking,
Sure.
or the people
Go ahead.
protesting, or people walking down the mall, calling out. That's why I think the idea of peaceful protest just doesn't make sense. Why would the people scared of protest?
So I want to add to that this one further.
What does it mean to protest?
Sure.
I want to add on to that. So we know China being China, they micromanage every single thing in their life, in their country. We know what happened with the COVID, and after 3 months we stopped hearing anything from them. Stats never came back. I don't think so. They're doing it to Uyghurs because they are Muslim. They would have done it to any minority. Who would
Okay. Wait, do you know what?
And second question-
No. Wait. He asked a question. He asked another one. I'll forget otherwise. Let me answer this one, then yours, then you'll ask your third one.
My question will end
No.
Why shouldn't we ask them to emigrate?
Okay.
My question is, aren't we
No, but look, my friend, let me answer your question, then his question, then I'll answer the new questions. The first thing is, you said if we don't have money or military, we should be silent. Now, against Israel, one second, sir, you had your question, let me answer. Against Israel, we don't have money, we don't have military, yet we protested peacefully, and everything I advocate is legal.
That's right.
So that has an impact. The second question that you had, which is this, it's not.
Finish the question.
Assalamu alaikum, brother. How you doing? Yeah.
I didn't
So,
finish
okay,
the
no,
question.
okay, one second. The other question you had, you did finish, and that question is, it's not happening. They're not doing it to them because they're Muslim. That's not true. I'll tell you why.
Okay.
Because the Uighur Muslims, they're doing this too. The Kazakhs, 10% of the people in the camps are Kazakhs, right? So it is about Islam, which is why they put their filthy red flag above the word of Allah, right? And they blaspheme against the Prophet.
Now,
What-
now linking back to
your question first.
The problem is that Muslims everywhere will be persecuted because their loyalty is not to any nation. Naturally, we are loyal to Islam. So I will feel more in common with a Uyghur Muslim than an African Christian. That's who we are.
So linking back to his question.
Our loyalties are towards other Muslims. Our affinities is towards other Muslims because this is إنه أخوانا. We are brothers, you see. So for the Uyghurs, I think we are just tired of talking and speaking against when we have the economic might of the quarter of the world's population, for goodness sake. Aren't we just enough of talking, and whoever have any weapon to use, whether it's military, whether it's economy, because China is not going to listen to people arguing.
No, sir, let me answer. Excuse me, can you move out of the way? Okay, look, sir, it is impractical, sir, it's impractical to speak about military solutions.
I'm not talking about military. We don't have military.
Okay, but the simplest thing which works, every person that came out last Saturday and the Saturday before and all across the world, they played a role in Israel pulling out of Gaza. Without money, without military. What we're advocating is the same thing. Every person in their country don't break the law. However, use the legal means which is boycotting, protesting, and these things. Because I'll tell you something. If we start talking loudly against China, China will stop.
Do you think so?
Why?
Yes.
Okay, one
I'll tell you why. I'll tell you exactly why. The same reason Israel did.
Can I now, brother? I was gonna say, so China being China, what the brother said, instead of protesting against Chinese government, which we think they will hardly listen to us, can we not ask those Chinese government, Uyghur Muslims, to emigrate from there? Like whenever you're oppressed, you are asked
To immigrate. Yes.
To emigrate, yes.
Islamically, you are encouraged.
They are not allowed to leave. Their passports are confiscated. They cannot go for Hajj or Umrah. If they do go to Hajj, they're tagged.
Yes.
They're tagged like animals.
It's not easy for them to leave. Yes, I agree.
If they could, they would all go to Kashmir. They would all go to Afghanistan. They would all go, without an exception. Not one Uyghur would be left behind.
Yeah. But what I'm saying is, I don't think the Chinese government is going to give a rat's tail about people protesting in the other end of
They will. I'll tell you why.
Why?
I'll tell you why. Because of economics. I stopped buying. Yeah, I stopped buying Chinese goods, and I'm one Muslim.
Now you're
If
talking.
1/4 of humanity boycotts China,
Now you're talking.
yeah,
Now you're
and all we need to do, guys, we need to impact the Chinese government by even 5%.
That's right. Yeah.
5% of their economy going down. Even that will send them, will send
So
shockwaves.
that's what I was saying. If you want to people to listen to you, you have to have one of two weapons in this war.
Money.
Either money or
That's what I agree
or
with you.
military. We don't have military because we are we are so weak, we are so fragmented, we are useless. But we have money. We have money like we are a quarter of the world population. So the best way forward is to boycott. If you have to buy a trashy Egyptian, Malaysian product that's a bit more expensive than a higher quality Chinese, more cheaper thing, that we need to do it. But the language of talking and protesting, that could work in the West maybe, on Israel, yeah, but in China, I don't think they absolutely have anything.
That's why the money counts.
Yes, money is power.
What's happening next weekend here?
Not here. Next weekend, there's an Uyghur tribunal taking place in Westminster. And you're going to have Uyghur activists. You're going to have people coming up and speaking on this issue.
Under what organization?
Under the Uyghur Tribunal,
And is it the buying?
which is established here in the UK by Jeffrey Nice, who is a former judge and who judged in favor of the genocide against the Muslims in Bosnia.
When you say tribunal, is it open for masses or is something happening indoors?
Yes, it's open for everybody.
Next Sunday, yeah?
Next Friday to Monday.
Sorry, if I may ask, what way does it have? Like this
Okay, good.
tribunal?
Very good.
Is it just another?
It has no legal weight
Okay,
and it has no jurisdiction.
right.
However,
Any United Nations something?
no, because it doesn't have anything. But it's a landmark event because what's happened is people are doing it as a public event away from all states. And so therefore it's independent. Yeah. Huh?
What's your name, brother?
Sabur.
Subboor, you look different now. For 2 years ago, I saw the video. Maybe you're the same guy. What's your background in university?
Philosophy.
Oh yeah, you studied philosophy. And your initial videos were about mainly against
Darwin.
Darwin, yeah, and all that.
Thank you very much, Brother Subboor. Big fan.
What's
big
your
fan,
name?
man.
What's your name?
Ismail.
Ismail, where are you from?
Sudan.
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 As Sudanese people as well, you have a huge duty to speak up as well because
We did speak up.
No.
And we become extremely hungry.
yes,
Believe me.
and I'll tell
The poverty we've seen in the past 30 years
yeah.
is something else. And that's because we said, no, we are not going to make peace with Israel. We are against the interest payments, and we suffered for it.
And do you know?
Yes, we have to. We have to, because
And
we don't have anything else.
Israel.
It's one of the
Israel and
We had to, when Egypt is there, Saudi Arabia is there, Emirates is there, all extend their hands to Israel. Why Sudan? We are not even pure Arabs.
And there was a
We are Arab speakers,
conspiracy. Yeah,
but why
there was
are we so sad for that the Muslim world is Israel when Turkey has a
and do you know the thing about Turkey?
Why?
The thing about Turkey, yeah? Turkey has not only an Islamic obligation, they are themselves originally from Turkestan. The Ottomans, the Seljuks, they originally came from those places.
Yeah. But I mean is we, like in Sudan, we suffered like no one else suffered because of the business with Israel. It was in Khartoum when Israel had the three big no's. See, when the Arab world went after Israel attacked Egypt, and the three no's, which is no to peace with Israel, no to recognize Israel, and no peace, no recognition, and no negotiation. It was called in Khartoum because why Khartoum is always been the place for Muslims to feel free.
Yeah.
And we suffered for it. And now we see that we are called the terrorists. Why? Because Egypt doesn't want us to develop, and Saudi Arabia want to import our doctors and our people working for it. Why? We are not even pure Arabs, man. Look at me. Do I look like an Arab? No, I'm African. I'm East African. Yes, there could be some mixed blood because geographically we are linked to that area. But why?
And
why should we suffer?
even Egypt.
Yes, why should we suffer?
No, but the thing is, look,
Brother, sorry, I don't think so. Turkey accepted Israel recently. They were
It
one of the
accepted Israel very early. Turkey had
because they are secular.
Morocco had